I never thought my own family would go so far as to block me from attending my father's 60th birthday celebration. Yet here I was, standing on the marble steps outside the Elmsworth, as my sister Elise planted herself in front of the entrance like a gatekeeper in designer heels. The stately hotel towered behind her, all glass and stone, its luxury understated and impeccable, just like I'd intended when I built it. "You're not serious," I said, adjusting the sleeve of my black silk dress. One simple seam, yet it cost more than Elise's car payment. Not that she'd know. He's my father, too. Elise's lips curled into a familiar self-satisfied smirk. "Look, Delilah, this isn't lunch at Panera. The Elmsworth is exclusive." She stretched the word out like she was tasting it. "The tasting menu alone costs more than you probably make in a quarter." She glanced at her reflection in the glass, flicking invisible lint from her shoulder. "Mom and Dad were clear. They only want people here who represent the family well." The irony nearly made me laugh. Just yesterday, I'd signed off on a $160 million, 0 cents expansion plan for the Elmsworth collection. And today, I was apparently not even good enough to step inside one of my own properties. 10 years ago, I'd walked away from the family's sleepy tax consultancy in Milwaukee to chase a dream in luxury hospitality. My father's parting words still echoed. "No daughter of mine is going to be a glorified concierge." So I let them believe that's exactly what I became. Let them assume I was folding napkins and bussing tables in some nameless hotel. Meanwhile, I built Delhaven Estates into one of the fastest-growing luxury hotel groups in North America. The concierge now owned 28 five-star properties across 3 countries. "Delilah," my mother's voice sliced through the cold air. She peered behind Elise, brows drawn in a familiar look of tight disapproval. "What are you doing here? We discussed this." No, they had discussed it. I'd received a single text that morning. "Don't come to Dad's birthday. It's at the Elmsworth. You can't afford it. Don't embarrass us." I lifted a slim white envelope. I brought a gift. Inside was the deed to a private hillside villa in Lake Como, the latest addition to the Delhaven signature collection. My plan had been to present it tonight, both as a birthday gift and a quiet unveiling of the truth. Elise tilted her head. "Let me guess, an Amazon gift card?" I smiled faintly. "Something like that." For a moment, I considered turning around. Let them have their illusion. Let them think I was still the family dropout with overpriced dreams and no direction. But then I remembered. Everything behind those glass doors existed because I dared to leave. And tonight, so would the truth. "Oh, what is it?" Elise scoffed, eyeing the envelope in my hand. "A gift card to Olive Garden." She laughed, the sound sharp and performative. "Or maybe you scraped together enough tips to get him something from the clearance rack at the mall." My mother's gaze narrowed, zeroing in on my clutch. A minimalist piece of hand-stitched Italian leather, one of a kind and quietly elegant. It had cost more than Elise's Audi. But they didn't need to know that. "Whatever it is," my mother said with a tilt of her chin, "I'm sure your sister's gift is more appropriate. She just made junior partner at her firm, you know." I knew. Just like I knew that same firm was currently negotiating to lease 2 floors in one of my commercial buildings downtown, desperately trying to lock in a discount rate before the quarter ended. "Elise is doing so well," Mom continued, her voice softening with pride. "New home in Oak Bluffs, luxury SUV, and that wonderful fiancé of hers, so driven, so polished." She gave me a slow once-over, eyes pausing on my understated dress. "And you, well, at least you're trying." I thought about the penthouse I owned in London with floor-to-ceiling views of the Thames, the curated garage of collector cars, the private jet I had boarded at sunrise. "Yes," I said, "at least I'm trying." Elise smirked. "Speaking of effort, that dress?" Her eyes sparkled with contempt. "This is the Elmsworth, not a truck stop." I glanced down at the jet-black silk draped perfectly over my frame. It had been custom designed in Paris by a label that had quietly blacklisted Elise after her last tantrum at a showroom, but I didn't mention that. "It's what I could manage," I said evenly. Well, you can't come in, she said flatly. We reserved the VIP floor. It's for family and distinguished guests only. The VIP floor. It's my floor. The one I had renovated personally last fall. Curating the art, commissioning the chandeliers, and hand-picking the imported tiles from a quarry in southern Italy. The distinguished guests being? I asked, playing along. Oh, you wouldn't know them, my mother said, flapping a hand. The Fairchilds. He's a senior partner at that top firm, the Blackwoods. Old family money. And Mr. Grayson from the bank. All very important people. I bit back a smile. Fairchild leased 3 properties from my commercial portfolio. The Blackwoods had been begging for an invitation to my Caribbean retreat for months. And Mr. Grayson? His bank had just submitted a loan request to my holding company. Right, I nodded. Very important. Exactly, Elise said, pleased. So you see why you can't be here. What would people think if they found out Dad's failure of a daughter was working the event? Elise, my mother said in a scolding tone, but her eyes glimmered with quiet agreement. Be nice. Delilah made her choices. If she had stayed in the family firm like you, maybe tonight would have been different. I smiled slightly. Oh, tonight would be different. Just not in the way they expected. The family firm, once the pride of our name, now occupied a modest second-floor office in one of my mixed-use buildings. They were always late on rent, always requesting just a little more time. I never denied them, but I never gave them discounts either. Just then Charles appeared at the entrance, adjusting his tie with that nervous energy he always tried to pass off as confidence. What's taking so long? Everyone's waiting for. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. His face tightened like a pulled string. Delilah, didn't expect to see you here. Clearly not, I said, my voice cool. Charles just made vice president, my mother said quickly, grasping for control of the conversation. She rested a hand on his shoulder like she was presenting a trophy. Junior vice president, I corrected gently, my tone pleasant. I knew his exact title because the bank he worked for handled some of Delhaven's smaller vendor accounts. Charles's jaw shifted. Elise shot me a look of pure irritation. Well, still more impressive than whatever it is you're doing, she snapped. What is it now? Assistant manager at some cafe chain? I thought back to the board meeting I had left earlier that morning, where we reviewed final documentation for the acquisition of Charles's bank. The ink was practically dry. The press release would go out next week. Something like that, I said lightly. This is ridiculous, my mother interjected. Delilah, just go. You're making a scene. I'll tell your father. Couldn't make it, Elise chimed in with a smug smile. Couldn't afford it, more like. I looked past them through the arched entryway into the Elmsworth's gleaming lobby. The marble floors I had personally selected, the Murano glass chandeliers I'd commissioned, the modernist paintings I had sourced during a gallery trip through Europe. Every inch of it, mining. For a moment, I considered walking away. Let them have their curated fantasy. Let them believe the version of me they had always preferred, struggling, invisible, forgettable. But then I remembered what my first mentor, a woman who built her empire from scratch, once told me. Success means little if you can't look someone in the eye and own it. I stood taller. My heels clicked against the granite as I stepped forward. Actually, I said quietly, I think I'll stay. Before my mother could respond, the glass doors swung open with a smooth hiss. James stepped outside, tall and composed in his tailored suit. He'd been with me since I bought my first fixer-upper inn 7 years ago. Is everything all right, Madam CEO? His voice carried with effortless authority. Your usual table is ready, and Chef René delayed the tasting menu for your approval. The silence that followed was bone-ting. Elise's lips parted in shock. Her blush now looked clownish against her pale complexion. My mother gripped the brass door handle, knuckles white. James, I said, smiling warmly, perfect timing. I turned to the stunned cluster of relatives. They were just explaining how I couldn't afford to dine here. James blinked. Ma'am, with all due respect, you own the Elmsworths and the entire Delhaven chain. Yes, I said, turning to them. I do. I stepped back and gestured toward the entry. Shall we go inside? I looked directly at Elise. I believe you reserved the VIP floor? If watching mass fall and truths rise gave you chills, subscribe to the channel, because the next part of the story, that's where the real reckoning begins. You won't want to miss what happens when Delilah takes her seat at her table. My VIP floor, to be precise, I said. Charles found his voice first, though it faltered. This has to be some kind of joke. You're just a restaurant manager, he scoffed. Actually, James interjected, his tone calm but firm. Miss Caldwell is the founder and CEO of Delhaven Hospitality Group. He glanced at them evenly. She owns all 17 Elmsworth hotels across 3 countries, along with our luxury resorts and fine dining brands. Elise's designer clutch slipped from her wrist, landing with a loud clack against the marble. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. But that's impossible, she finally stammered. The Elmsworth brand is worth billions, I finished smoothly. Which makes your comment about me not being able to afford the tasting menu rather amusing. I stepped through the entrance and into the heart of my hotel. The lobby staff straightened at the sight of me, all offering polite nods or warm greetings. Good evening, Miss Caldwell, said Lena at the front desk. The executive suite is ready for the celebration. Thank you, Lena. I turned back toward my family, who still hovered in the entryway as if passing the threshold would rewrite their version of reality. Coming? They followed in stunned silence, eyes sweeping the marble floors. The bespoke lighting, the art installations sourced from my private collection. Suddenly, they were seeing everything for me, for the first time. But your dress, my mother finally said, her voice unsure. It's so simple. Custom, I replied casually. Paris, around 30,000 if I remember right. I stopped checking price tags years ago. I led them to the private elevator, removing a sleek black keycard from my clutch. Unlike Elise's dress, I added, glancing at my sister, which I believe is a knockoff. Valentino hasn't released that line yet. I know, I was at the private preview in Milan. The elevator doors opened into the VIP lounge, where the birthday celebration was already underway. The room hushed as we stepped in. Delilah, my father rose from his seat at the head of the table, his brow furrowed in confusion. What are you doing here? Your mother said you couldn't afford it, I offered, finishing his sentence as I walked toward him. I reached into my bag and handed him the envelope containing the deed. Happy birthday, Dad. I hope you don't mind me crashing the party in my own hotel. Your hotel, a familiar voice interrupted. Mr. Grayson from the bank stepped forward, his eyes wide. Miss Caldwell, I had no idea you were connected to the Thompsons. He looked between me and James with dawning realization. We've been trying to schedule a meeting with you for months regarding that financing proposal. Delilah owns the Elmsworth? Another guest asked. It was Thomas Fairchild, the attorney leasing 3 of my downtown properties. My God, James, he added, turning to my father, your daughter is the mystery CEO who's been quietly acquiring the best real estate in the city. My father sat back down heavily, all color drained from his face. All this time, he whispered, we thought you were just a glorified waitress. I smiled faintly and raised an eyebrow. No, Dad, I just kept my head down while I built everything you said I couldn't. Your words, I believe, I said, watching my father's face pale, from the day I left the family firm to pursue a future in hospitality. But why didn't you tell us? My mother demanded, still gripping her string of pearls like a lifeline. Would you have believed me? I asked, voice quiet but unflinching. You didn't believe in me 10 years ago, when I asked for your support. Why would I share my success with people who only measure worth by last names and bank balances? I paused, my gaze sweeping the stunned room. Though by that metric, I suppose I'm worth more than everyone here, combined. Elise sank into the nearest chair, her face drained of all color. The villa in the south of France, she whispered. The one I tried to book last summer, the one no one could get into. Mine, I said calmly. Just like the office building your firm is struggling to lease, Charles, and the resort membership you've been waitlisted for, Mother. Delilah, my father started, his voice uneven, I. We. Save it. I raised my hand. I didn't do this to humiliate you, though I've been humiliated plenty over the years. I did this because I'm tired of shrinking myself to protect your egos. I turned and addressed the room. Please, enjoy the party. Everything tonight is on the house. My house. I began walking toward the elevator, then stopped and looked back at my father. Oh, and the envelope Elise refused to let me hand you? It's the deed to a villa in Tuscany, one of my most exclusive estates. Consider it a birthday gift. From your failure of a daughter. The next hour felt like stepping through an alternate timeline. Suddenly, the same people who'd barely nodded at me during past family gatherings were hanging on every word I said. The Blackwoods practically begged for a second chance at that resort membership. Mr. Grayson cornered me to revisit his bank's loan application. Meanwhile, my family sat like spectators in a stadium that had turned on them. Elise's fiancé disappeared shortly after overhearing that her future partnership depended on leasing an office she couldn't afford. Charles kept pacing near the bar, thumbing through his phone, likely updating his resume. My mother drifted from group to group, oscillating between silent tears and theatrical stories about how she'd always seen potential in me. It would have been comical if it hadn't been so painfully transparent. As the celebration quieted, I stepped out onto the terrace for a breath of cool air. My father was already there, staring at the city skyline. He didn't turn when I approached. These buildings, he said, pointing across the lights. How many do you own? Enough, I said, joining him at the railing. Including the one the family firm operates out of. He nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the horizon. I was wrong about you, Delilah. So terribly wrong. Yes, I replied. You were. He looked at me. Can you ever forgive us? I thought about it. About the years of silence, the dismissals, the laughs behind closed doors. Forgiveness isn't really the issue, I said. Respect is. You never respected my choices. You only respect what's proven. I smiled faintly. Well, now you can tell your friends your daughter owns the Elmsworth. That should give you something to say at your next dinner party. I left him there, alone with his thoughts, and headed to my private office on the top floor. Tomorrow, the family dynamic would be different. Elise would no longer be the golden child. My mother would begin rewriting history in real time. And Charles's entire bank was on my acquisition list. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told you weren't enough, I see you. Leave a comment below and tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? I read every message, and your voice matters here. And if you believe in quiet strength, long games, and proving them wrong without ever raising your voice, subscribe. There's more to my story, and I want you with me when the next chapter unfolds. My advice? Don't waste your energy trying to impress people who only clap for success they can brag about. Build in silence, succeed anyway, and when the time comes, own it.